Alright, so we are heading into round number 2 of the Garnet Cup. This time we have Mr. Fantastic, Giant Frog, Pavlos, and Chaos Chuck, all looking to pick up their first win this tournament. We are on series with a glass colony and double electronics this time. There are nomads available, but with the double electronics that doesn't seem super interesting, and all low silicon also does not scream nomad, although glass colony does. So we'll see how that pans out. Double steel as well means that that's going to be a bit of a slower start. There is a lot of iron available for an expansive potentially, or even a scientist, although the scientists will probably not be happy with how the water situation near iron pans out. A scavenger is definitely a possibility. That is a strong set of carbon tiles. It's not super close to the aluminum, but not terribly far off either. Interesting thing to note, all the uranium is in that corner, so we'll see how players play around that in particular. Oh. I'm so bad at hosting. Wait, is it mask? Oh well. Either way, everyone's founded. Pablo's founds there, he picks up the carbon and the aluminum. That's going to be a perfectly solid start. Cash Chuck with the iron and steel, also perfectly fine. Has managed to buy up all the aluminum, that's good for him. Mr. Fantastic is going to struggle a bit more. He has 2 steel mills down. They do not have adjacency, and that is unfortunate. There is 1 claim left. We'll see where that lands. But realistically, Mr. Fantastic could have used these caves, could have gotten good adjacency on his steel mills, and that would have worked out very nicely for him. Giant Frog going for a less conventional opening, going for farms to start off and an ice condenser. Solar condenser, I guess. Food started at normal price, so that's not great for him, especially with aluminum and steel starting expensive. It's going to be difficult for him to push to HQ2. Water is going to be a bit better in terms of money, but it's probably right to split like this. I did have masks selected, okay. So maybe I'm just, I don't know, whatever. Let's not think too hard about this. Pavlos has gotten to HQ2. He has moved into power, gooned it. I am concerned about this. Power is not at a good price right now. He's making the water money. He has the water coming in to supply the nuke plants. Does not have the uranium, but no one's in a position to buy up the uranium and make that a problem. Thing is, it's just not going to be something that works out long term for Pavlos. He's not going to make any significant amount of money on it. I would have strongly preferred something like moving into just this silicon. Just collect a bunch, it can be transitioned easily into glass, then you secure your upgrade, and that works out quite nicely. What is everyone else up to? Mr. Fantastic has moved into additional steel mills using the caves for the adjacency, and that's nice. Also moving into power and aluminum. The aluminum's definitely necessary and good. Beating Chaos Chuck to it is also unfortunate for Chaos Chuck. Could have picked up nice double aluminum there. Pushed him forward quite a bit faster. But it is definitely understandable to skip the low, given that you miss out on the medium. Pavlos has picked up this tile next to the colony. I'm not sure what his plan for that tile is, and it definitely gets in the way of making power money. I would hope to see him transition out of power very quickly, because that's no longer viable. It's just a money sink at this point. Again, silicon, glass, still very much an option. Instead moving to reactors, which are solid. But he's going to have some trouble with water. Price is still fairly high. He's not going to be producing enough off of that high to sustain the reactors and his life support. Mr. Fantastic, still doing okay off of the steel. Needs to buy up the glass to secure HQ3. But yeah, this single nuclear plant was never going to do a ton. It is interesting to see this uranium tile picked up. Long term, that could be very good if he's the only one to make that commitment, which he might be. It's a very big commitment to ship across the entire map, and anyone else is probably going to pick up a pair of lows, which is just painful at that distance. Okay, Giant Frog finally making it to HQ2. No big surprise there, given how difficult that start was. Did manage to pick up aluminum off of his core sample, which did help him a significant amount. This water pump, this double aluminum, should be good. I would like to see the auto selling of food stop. He is the only person producing any significant amount of food. I guess the price of food, it should still be rising. The colony is producing a positive amount of food, but everyone else is still consuming food. So there's still a net consumption of food. Price will go up, and yeah, okay, auto selling stopped. Perhaps that was just a temporary thing to push for being able to build stuff, in which case it's fine. Cash Chuck has managed to push into HQ3, moved into glass, which is... no, wait. He did move into glass, yeah. Those lines are to the aluminum. Right. Mr. Fantastic at HQ3 pushing for the second aluminum was definitely a mistake. If you looked at, like, just looking at Pablos moving to the triple aluminum means that aluminum is not going to be an issue long term. Everyone definitely just overcommitting to the aluminum. The price was very high, but it was very clear that it was on its way down since everyone was making a move towards it. So definitely some mistakes there, but Cash Chuck being in the glass so heavily and earlier than most is a big part of why he's doing quite well. Transparent aluminum is actually quite good. Aluminum, of course, like we were just talking about, is pretty awful, and glass is quite high. So 28k claim makes a lot of sense. On series, claims are worth a lot. There are no claims in the market. Pablos has low debt, so he can afford to pay a fair amount for that claim. And glass is definitely strong enough to warrant this thing. The power is finally starting to climb up a bit. Our players... what are players doing? We have double nuclear for Mr. Fantastic. Pairing that up from HQ2. Just something consistently from Mr. Fantastic. Moving to a bunch of single buildings to cover needs is not the best way forward. You can see that sort of contributing to him lagging behind. But he is pairing them up eventually, and they are becoming pretty strong buildings. We'll see how that pans out. Giant Frog also having some issues here with adjacency. But some of that is just a result of needing to move into power, not really having a ton of money for that, not wanting to move out of all the aluminum. It's just been a very awkward game for Giant Frog. Not a great starting position, and everything's always a struggle when you don't have the money. Yes, Chuck moved into the trio of solar panels, which were great for him with the solar flare. No one did freeze those, and that is just very good. One thing Giant Frog has been doing, storing up a lot of black market, which is something. I mean, it's all very cheap, so it's not a problem, but some of it is a question when you are struggling that much, whether you should be spending anything on black market. Like, the chances of you winning are pretty much dependent on you making a very quick comeback and kind of hoping people do the work for you of the attacks. So there was this network virus and mutiny onto KS Chuck's patent lab. That was all Mr. Fantastic. Virus, of course, always useful to check for goon squads. It is a bit of a commitment to do that, spending 2 black market cooldowns just to try to get this done. But worked out for him. picking up teleportation, not necessarily what you want to see, but it should work out quite nicely for Chaos Chuck. Lets him move out of this aluminum more easily, makes this uranium commitment better, and it makes future life support production easier as well. Chaos Chuck is actually moving on a buy on Mr. Fantastic, which he might get to. It's going to be close. Mr. Fantastic finishing teleportation is definitely going to be a big problem in that push. But we'll see how that goes. Pavlos is hacking power, which is interesting. I'm still very concerned about Pavlos doing all this. He's in the best position to make the power money, but again, there is enough of a commitment to power from every other player that he's not getting a huge, he's not getting the lion's share of the power money. And as long as he's committed to power, he's spending a lot of money on this uranium. He did manage to core sample out some water, and that's been great for him, making a lot of money there. I guess he's making a lot of money on power right now, so maybe he's fine anyway. But yeah, this doesn't feel like the right long-term play. Hacker array and power. Something with optimization centers and research feels a lot more sustainable. We'll see where this goes though. This is series. Optimization centers are king. Chaos Chuck moving into liquid batteries will be great for the solar panels. I'm not sure. Chaos Chuck does not have any water secured. That is interesting. It's also not on any ice tiles yet. So I wonder how that's gonna go. Right. Anyway. Chaos Chuck's buy onto Mr. Fantastic failed. Not too surprising there. Even though Chaos Chuck was most of the way there, he didn't have a strong source of income remaining. And just kind of stalled out. Did manage to get to HQ5, still in a pretty good position, although his debt's fairly high, in large part because he's been neglecting life support, not auto-supplying these buildings. Well, partially because he needs to free up some money for that. But yeah, only now just moving some power water. It's decent water there. Is that all core sampled out? I don't remember seeing quite that much water there. Well, apparently not. But core samples are really high this game. A bunch of that has just been Giant Frog doing things, but there's definitely been other core samples that I've missed. I don't know how I feel about this water. Water is definitely necessary. If anything, I probably would have liked to see just 2 water tiles and optimizations to cover the rest. 3 water tiles is a big commitment. It's very far away. And yeah, it's just all a bit of a problem. Optimizations, optimizations, optimizations. Talked about those as the name of the game. Pavlos is is one of 2 people in an optimization center. And the other is Giant Frog, but Giant Frog is still a long way behind. Doesn't have the optimization center up yet. Pavlos is optimizing silicon, which is interesting. There are definitely options that stick out more to me. Any of the life support options, glass, does already have summon glass, chems definitely. Still trying to make the power play work. Moving into carbon now makes a lot of sense. Does anyone else have carbon flowing in? No. That is something that's potentially really helpful for Pavlos. Carbon, of course, is another one of those resources that tends to go crazy in the late game on series just because it's necessary for chemicals and electronics. If you're not a scavenger, it doesn't feel all that necessary. There is no carbon scrubbing, though. So, with the base pressure on market prices on series, that price just keeps climbing and climbing. And Pavlos should have a very clear path to making a lot of money there. Chaos Chuck does have the alternative path in the uranium, although that's falling although Giant Frog has entered that market himself as well. It's not going to be enough to keep the uranium price in check, but again, Cash Check also only has one uranium tile. It's not going to make a ton of money regardless. It might... Okay. So, Mr. Fantastic has had the 2 stock into Cash Check for a long time now. It's probably just staying there. Picking up 2 in Giant Frog isn't going to do much of anything. Giant Frog's stock price pretty high because he has no debt, but only very slowly climbing his way back into things with the Optimization Center and Patent Lab. Thinking Machines is a bit of a weird pickup to me. Off-worlds aren't great this game, and I mean, even if launches were very high in price, these prices scream do not ever go off-world. There's just so much more money to be made on-world. Nanotech makes a lot of sense. Energy Vault does not feel like a high-impact patent, and Giant Frog just needs stuff that is high-impact. I feel like a better path this game probably involved more optimizations and HQ5. That's not what we're seeing. It seems like he's just going to be way too far behind Pavlos with just too much money. Meanwhile, Mr. Fantastic Chaos Chuck getting locked into this battle. Chaos Chuck is in so much debt. 242k. It's only going to keep getting worse. It's going to keep compounding with all the interest ticks. And even if he manages to buy onto Mr. Fantastic, Pavlos has so much money that he should be able to clean things up from there. This fight is just unfortunate in that sense. Pavlos hacking down food is interesting. I guess he's not in food. Pavlos, again, still very committed to this power play. I still do not like that at all. There's no particular reason for that. Producing too much silicon, too much power. Could easily be in farms himself. Could be in more chems. Like, there's a lot that Pavlos can be doing. Shouldn't be too critical of him. He's still just running away with things right now. Mr. Fantastic. Moving out of the power. Makes a lot of sense right now with how high prices are. That could be dangerous longer term. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But yeah. It was definitely a bit sloppy early on, having all the single buildings for Mr. Fantastic, but he's cleaned that up to a large degree. A lot of things have pairs. And should be making a fair amount of money from here. Getting optimizations rolling. Uranium is important, but I do question optimizing it. You are only producing the 1 uranium per second. So optimizations are just never going to be all that impactful. Chems feel like a much better investment right now, especially since everyone's going to be fighting over them. You want to contest that market as heavily as you can. Take as much of the share of money there as possible. Alright, Pavlos finishes the buy on Chaos Chuck because Mr. Fantastic has just been spending all his money pushing into Giant Frog instead. That is going to mean that Pavlos gets a big stock price boost, potentially a lot of sub income that Mr. Fantastic could have had. Which just helps solidify things for Pavlos. Giant Frog's still not really in this game. Kind of stalled out here. Single chem refinery, still in the single water pump, single glass. Definitely pushing through on these optimizations has been good, but it's just been a struggle. Hasn't been able to get up to HQ5, hasn't been able to make this territory work. It's just been a bit awkward with all the core samples, and none of the prices worked out in his favor. Pavlos just kinda going. Again, not too much to say about Pavlos' base. Same things I've been saying all game long. You have 1000 silicon. There's no need for this still. Look at this. You're making 500 a second on these chems. You're not making money on this power. Why is this all still happening like this? Okay. Hacker Ray is idle. There's probably not anything great to hack. Electronics is not a contested market at this moment. That is an option. Hacking down food is also an option, although producing food is probably the better option. Surpluses, no matter how much you chain them, generally just don't have enough of an impact to deal with markets that you're trying to ignore. They're good supplements, like if you're also trying to contest the market and make sure people don't get too much money off of it, because you have a disadvantage in it, but it's just not doing the job. We've seen food stay strong for a long time. But still, Pavlos has a significant lead in this buyout race, getting a lot more money off of this subsidiary, Chaos Chuck, and is just poised to take this. Mr. Fantastic even selling out of Pavlos, looking to finish the buy on to Giant Frog. That is unlikely to clean things up here. I don't know, it's an interesting play. It's probably worth it. Mr. Fantastic is so deep into Giant Frog, and the goal for Pavlos to buy out Pavlos is so high that getting the extra stock price boost, getting the extra income is probably helpful, especially since Pavlos doesn't have any major things going for him long term. Well, I guess he does. He's been pushing out optimizations continuously, more so than anyone else. On the other hand, he doesn't have the optimizations into electronics, and that might be something. At this point though, Pavlos is still only 200k away from finishing off this game. Mr. Fantastic does get 2 extra claims off of that buyout, can quite easily move into this carbon, which will be excellent. Probably should move into a second carbon tile as well, knowing that Pavlos has been trying to just make that work all game, and succeeding in large part. That is something I talked about. There was some carbon production elsewhere, but 1 carbon production between 3 other players is nowhere near enough, and that has been a big deal in helping Pavlos secure the win. Some suboptimal claim use, but it all doesn't matter if you have the fundamental things locked up in your favor. What happened here? This was originally... Oh, there was a tile auction at some point that I just completely missed. Well, that happens. Yeah, Pavlos did finally get rid of one of the 2 silicon. Alright, so this was Pavlos, Mr. Fantastic, Chaos Chuck. Okay, someone else has already entered that. Great. I assume the time has not yet entered. 22,250. There we go. So yeah, take a quick look at black market, take another quick peek at other things. A lot of money off the uranium, not surprising. A lot of money off the chems, also not surprising. Still would have liked to see earlier and more optimizations into chemicals all around, but got there eventually. More production of chemicals as well. There was a lot of research done and not nearly enough chemicals. There's too many resources devoted into things like power. Look at this. 188k on the food. 5 surpluses. It's a lot of time and resources that didn't need to be spent like that. Could have been making money there instead. It's okay though. Let's not be too critical. How did this all go? Mr. Fantastic picking up a lot of goon squads. Definitely a useful thing to have as a scientist with very valuable buildings, but also meant that he wasn't getting aggressive, which was part of why he was falling behind a bit, spending a lot of money here, and like all these single buildings meant that he wasn't likely to get attacked either. Just they're not generally appealing targets because they're not generally making very much money. Pavlo's just using a ton of core samples, getting good water off of them, getting... What else did Pavlos even get off of it? Z, okay. Is that water, that aluminum? I think that water as well. No, I actually don't think that water. A lot more silicon. It's probably looking for something better than low, but it wasn't necessary. If it's under your tiles, you can just collect a ton of it. You don't need to waste all those cooldowns and all that money searching for something better, I don't think. It's okay though. Quick look at entertainment revenue. Nothing significant. No big surprise there. It's rarely a huge thing on series. Optimizations. Yeah, not a ton of optimizations for anyone. Generally fairly spread across the board. Would have liked to see everyone did get to some decent chem optimizations. It's fine.